Hello, my name is Angela Yake, and today I'm going to be talking to you about differentiating for gifted, creative, and talented students. I hope that you get some perspective today from some of the tools that I have used in my classroom, specifically targeting that I am a technology teacher, and so sometimes I have some tools that can be used across the curriculum that I use in my classroom. So I hope you get something from that. There are several areas of differentiation, so we're going to be focusing on differentiating content, process, product, and the learning environment today. One of the ways that you can teach content in a different way is to help teach and reach a variety of students and break up the monotony of the general classroom. So one of the ways that I do that is by using Nearpod. Nearpod is a tool that is web-based, and it allows you to incorporate games, questions, quizzes, drawing features. So as you can see in the short little example here on the screen, this multimedia platform allows you to incorporate a lot of things into just one lesson. And you can even take this lesson and you can present it to the whole group, and they're able to engage in the lesson on their device. Or with a paid subscription, you're able to create lessons that you're able to then submit to kids to do individually. Now, the next thing that I want to focus on regarding content is to verify the curriculum being taught as far as whether it's in depth. So many times we look at that surface topic that we need to teach and see what the standard addresses in the content area. And so what we're wanting to do is really think about how deep students learning, and could they learn on a deeper level without doing more work? Like instead of doing 10 more problems because they finish quicker, is there another way to do that? So one of the ways that, or tools that we can use to kind of teach some deeper thinking skills are these depth and complexity icons from Dr. Sandra Kaplan. The depth and complexity icons actually help students understand how they learn. So these icons teach scaffolding that results in students forming deeper learning. Now, you'll notice on the slide that I am actually referencing a website called birdseed.com, and Birdseed actually has a section of the website that is committed to teaching teachers how to use these depth and complexity icons. Okay, so this is a glimpse of the Birdseed website, specifically the section of the website that I am referring to that discusses depth and complexity. And what I want to point out to you is there's a backstory, there's quick examples, why these icons, but he goes through and he gives you examples on how to use some of these. So you can take a look at individual sections on the icon, and you can then read deeper into how to use those icons. So this is very good. He also has within the depth and complexity lessons that you can watch. So I find this very helpful. The next thing you might want to consider is differentiating by asking students to think critically about the content. So you want to not just ask students to regurgitate the facts, but actually critically think about the content. So how do we do that? One of the examples that I'd like to show you is the critical thinking from a point of view. And what that is point of view is when the student reviews a document and not only gathers information from the document, but really thinks about who, what, where, and why it was produced. So they're thinking about the author of the document as well as not as what the content says. So one of the questions you could ask students is, what biases does this author represent in the article that you read? Can they recognize the point of view of the author? So if it's a parent talking about online teaching right now during the COVID-19 process, is their point of view a little bit different than a teacher teaching during the COVID-19 process? Or somebody that's standing outside thinking, well, I don't have kids and I'm not a teacher, but I'm going to write this article about what it's like to learn online during the COVID-19 crisis. So you want to think about not only the article and the content in it, but ask students to think about who produced it and where their position is on that topic. Now for Info Ohio, for the point of view, one example is you can go to 6th through 8th grade. It's also under the 9th through 12th grade. If you come through the 6th through 8th grade section, and you scroll through, there's this point of view reference center. And what I really like about the point of view reference center is it gives you different topics, but then it really breaks down those points of view. So for example, for my class, I might want to focus on distance learning right now. And so I would choose distance learning, like just discussed. It can read to us, so that's really good as far as the differentiation. So it can read the article to us. Then it also has a point and a counterpoint on that topic that you can read the other point on the topic. So this is online learning is really good. Online learning isn't so good. And then it even has a section down here about the guide to critically analyzing these two points of view. So online degree programs guide to critical analysis. So you can read through that. So this is something I would definitely suggest, especially if you're working for a school in Ohio and have access to Info Ohio, that you check out that resource. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about is creative thinking. Students need opportunities to create new or improved products based on the lessons and content being taught. So, for example, one of the things that I do is I ask students to come up with a new way to solve a problem. Now, remember, I talked about being a computer technology teacher. So one of the things I might do is ask students to think about the game rock, paper, scissors. And most students are familiar with the game rock, paper, scissors. Now they have to think about what it's like for a computer to automate the game. What does the computer need to know about the value of rock, the value of paper, and the value of scissors, and how that value changes when rock is versus paper and when rock versus scissors. So after they automate the game, they need to think about what would make this game better. Like maybe the rock beats the scissors, but does the game keep score? Because so frequently students will do rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And they don't normally just stick with that first time. Normally this person who loses says best 3 out of 5 or best 2 out of 3. And so is the computer going to keep score as to who wins the rock, paper, scissors battle? If it is going to keep score, are you going to add a scoreboard? One of the things students find when they're doing this creative thinking is that it's one thing to add a variable that's keeping score, and it's something else to display the score. So all we're doing is, while one group of students is still trying to figure out how to automate rock, paper, scissors, there's another group of students trying to figure out how to keep score with rock, paper, scissors and making it new or improved. And so sometimes it's just that simple, is encouraging their creative thinking and asking what they can do to change the certain scenario that they're in. Now, another type of differentiation is actually just not even with the content, but the process in which you are delivering the material. So we already talked about giving different resources, but sometimes just the process. Should you, like, what resources are you using to teach that, that content that you're trying to get across? So one way to mix up content is just by different technology. For example, using the Nearpod website is a little bit different than using the Nearpod app. Are we giving students a variety of ways to experience what they're learning? So using tablets, laptops, desktops, microcomputers to teach various skills. Now, I really focus on technology because of my content, but I also want to focus on technology for a moment as we're discussing gifted education, but also in the position that we find that several teachers are teaching remotely. And so it's really good to understand how technology is going to work on different devices because this is the student's future. So they're learning not only on a different device and varying up the resource materials, but they're actually able to then take this and review it critically. So maybe you would want to discuss some different applications and how they work differently on different devices. And maybe there are some applications that are just designed for different devices. So you wouldn't ask them to use a certain type of technology like Snapchat to do a advertising campaign if they don't have a mobile device because Snapchat's not going to work on their PC. Another thing that you can do with your content as far as how the process in which you deliver the content is to provide tiered activities. And those tiered activities allow some students to learn by doing a like lower or shallower activity and other students to do a higher reaching or a deeper activity. Now, it sounds kind of similar to the depth and complexity icons, whereas the depth and complexity icons can allow the students to form their own and look at how they're learning within that content. But this is just a little bit different. So let's talk about a tiered activity. When you're doing like a tiered lesson planning, for students at different levels, maybe what you will do is have an option for students to list the steps discussed to solve a problem. So if we're in math, list the steps that we discussed in class to solve a problem. So all they're doing is listing those steps because they're trying to remember the steps to solve that problem. Whereas other students will have the choice to create a new way to solve the problem. So maybe we talked about a formula and a method for solving a problem. Let's talk about multiplication, and maybe we're doing double digit multiplication and they discuss the steps, and one student comes up with one way and another student might use this lattice method or some other method that they have learned. And so, or maybe they haven't learned yet, they're just trying to come up with another way they could solve the problem, like breaking things up into pictures. Ultimately, the student is going to get a choice of which activity in the tiered activities, and then you can redirect them if they're kind of maybe choosing the lower tier than what they are capable of, in your opinion. And so tiered activities are a little bit different because there might be a higher level of learning or deeper level of learning, but they're given these tiers to kind of work through a problem. Another thing that you may want to consider is how students show that they are learning. So one way is to allow students to develop products. And so allow students to be part of the development of the product that demonstrates their content knowledge. Now, one of those products could be like a student designed rubric. So if you allow students to design a rubric to assess their final project or to submit a contract stating what they are doing, Kathy Schrock has some resources to allow this to be very user friendly for the student and teacher to work together to allow the student to decide what method they are going to use in order to grade their content knowledge. On Kathy Schrock's website, she has this section for the assessment and rubrics, and it really breaks down like different kinds of rubrics. So if you're going to have a student build their own writing style rubric, now note, Kathy Schrock is just kind of like a clearinghouse. She collects a lot of good resources, but she doesn't necessarily create the resources herself. She's collecting the resources. So some of the resources on Kathy Schrock's website may not work, or they may not be valid anymore. So some of the resources are actually made by her, like this one, where you can download this document and use it or edit it. It is a doc, so you're able to edit it. And she even talks about in here that you are allowed to use it for classroom use. But then you can have a student go through and modify a rubric like this to demonstrate their learning. But also, in addition to allowing students to create the product, maybe you want to vary the method in which you gauge the student's understanding. So maybe they can be doing a project, an experiment, or even a video instead. And maybe it's even an interview or a conversation where you're gauging their understanding of the content, and it's not in a traditional test. So maybe you have a checklist in your conversation that you're checking off their understanding on certain topics or certain talking points. One way that I vary assessment is annually we have a computer science fair, and I have students create projects. So the students would complete an end of the year project of a working computer program, and it's kind of like a gallery walk, except it's in a big room, and we invite people to come from outside. This year it's going to be a virtual fair online. And they illustrate their understanding of algorithms, abstraction variables, and software documentation all through the presentation of this project. And so it allows the students to, at a lower level, to still do a lower level project and still demonstrate their understanding. But then students at a more advanced level can then do a more advanced project and illustrate what their knowledge is on the content. You might also want to change up your learning environment. There are options for student seating. For example, I have cafe tables in my classroom. They actually fold up against the wall. I can pull out 4 cafe tables. Sometimes students stand around them. I also have some stools where students can sit at the cafe tables. And it's for small groups to sit with groups of 3 to 4. Whereas you might have larger round tables or place on the floor for students to sit. Just really differentiating your students' seating can really help all students, not just the gifted students, but those creative thinking tasks. And finally, I want to discuss classroom decor. Differentiation includes your classroom decor. It includes the posters that appeal to different interests and also are easy to change per unit. For example, I use magnetic frame holders that hang movie posters that align with the current topic. So maybe I am discussing something that has to do, not so much, maybe I'm not in biology class, so I'm not discussing the biology behind the dolphin tail, but maybe I'm discussing how they use social media and their webcam to get money donated for that dolphin in Florida that is discussed in the dolphin tale. So I can generate student interest by my classroom decor, and it's easy to change out. Okay, so here are my resources for what I used and what I discussed with in this program, and I hope that you gleaned some brief understanding of 10 different ways you can differentiate in your classroom with gifted and talented and creative students. Thank you so much.